Hi, my name is Ishmael Nader and this is why you should go to your area and not phone agents. So, I went to my area at the end of January. Now, my area at the time was Birmingham. Now, the reason I went to the area is because I was getting nowhere with agents on the phone. So every time I rang an agent, they weren't very helpful. They would say, not really give me any information. So what I decided to do was to book 2 viewings, go up to Birmingham on the Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. So I had 2 viewings booked for the Wednesday. So I went up on the Wednesday. Both viewings were useless. Properties were overpriced and you couldn't add any value to them because my strategy was buy, refurbish, refinance. And I ended up speaking to lots of agents. On the Wednesday, I spoke to about 4 agents. Wasn't very useful. I got 1 viewing booked for the Thursday. This viewing property was around about 150,000. After I went back to the hotel and did some due diligence on it, I found that it would only be about 165 to 170 done. After viewing it, I found that it needed about £8,000 worth of work. So this wasn't very useful property, but that gave me the whole of Thursday to minus the first viewing in the morning. So from about half past 10, I was going around agents in every area I could in the south side of Birmingham, speaking to them about what properties they had, what areas were good, what prices were the best to go for buy, refurbish, refinance. And after a day of speaking to agents, I came across one agent who was useful. They told me that the prices in Birmingham you need to be going for is £200,000 as a minimum if you're going to do a buy, refurbish, refinance. Anything below, and there won't be any profit in it. So that was very useful. They didn't exactly give me areas, but they said in general that's the rule of thumb. I spoke to other agents and found that they had a few on their books, which I booked in for the Friday. I also found 3 agents while I was there who would did corporate lets. They were doing rent to rents, or rather corporate lets. So I booked in 1 viewing for corporate let on Friday. None of the other agents had any suitable properties that the landlord would take on or accept corporate lets on, or at least they told me they didn't. So this corporate let I viewed on the Friday, it turned out to be about 8 minutes walk from a bus stop, which was the nearest bus stop, and it was around about 10 to 15 minutes on the bus to the nearest, to the city centre. It was around about 10 minutes to the nearest sort of small town, sub-town of Birmingham. So it was really out in the sticks as far as public transport would go. So I don't think that the figures would have added up, because no one really would have wanted to live so far away from bus routes, because a lot of people who have cars aren't necessarily looking for HMOs. So I discounted that one. The other agents, they were quite useful, but they didn't have any current rent-to-rent deals, apart from one other agent which had some way out of town in a small sub-town on the west side. I believe it was Beaumont. Now this sub-town was a dying town, and when looking at Airbnb and Booking.com, I found no comparables this far out. So I decided that it would not be a good area for serviced accommodation. So I didn't end up viewing those properties for rent-to-rent deals. So that was the rent-to-rent side. I did have one buy to SA in Birmingham's town centre. It was I believe it was B3 Jeweller's Court. Now this one after doing some viewings on it, I found that I'd probably be expecting about a 40% ROI after about a 5k refurb, which is okay, but as it's an SA, I couldn't guarantee the occupancy rates, and it would only be about a 20% ROI at 50% occupancy, which again was okay, but I was recommended that if you're going to be doing an SA, you want higher returns. Looking back, I'm not sure if it would have been suitable to sell, because I'm sure that there's some people who would have accepted it. But as a buy to let, it would let for about 800. It was about 160 to buy, 165 to buy, according to the agent, although it was on for 180. So I would have only been able to get around about an 8% ROI if it wasn't run as a normal buy to let, single let. So I decided that as a backup plan wasn't the best idea, and as they were building a lot of new builds around the area, I wasn't sure how well the prices will how much the prices will be affected. So I decided that was no good. So on the Friday, I viewed a few properties. Most of them were under the 250 mark. There was one which was above 250. It was on for 285. Now, after viewing the property, at the viewing of the property, the agent said that it would go for, it was currently under offer, and it was the offers were over 285. So they also said the best and final offer this was on the Friday, and they needed the best and final by Monday with proof of funds. Now, once I did my numbers, it would have probably worked reasonably well, but I'm not sure what the price that I would have had to pay was. But at asking price, it was about a 30% ROI after refurb, and it was around about a 70k refurb, and the end value was about 380. So it would have been an okay BRR, because there would have been a lot of equity left in the property. The return of investment wouldn't have been great, but you would have made up for it with the capital in the property. But because I needed best and final by Monday, and I didn't have the cash or the investors list at the time, I couldn't really make an offer and find out the exact price that they were looking for, because obviously, by the sounds of the agent, them saying it's already over asking price suggested it was nearer the 300 mark. So I left that property, and that was my trip to Birmingham. So, review of the Birmingham trip, I would suggest that speaking to agents in person is a lot better than speaking to them on the phone, because I rung about 30-40 agents on the phone and really didn't get much information. But after speaking to 3 or 4 good agents, I found out which areas were good, which areas were saturated for HMOs, which streets worked for HMOs, which streets didn't. I found that the HMOs in Birmingham, there was only a few streets where you would get a reasonable ROI, but because of the prices, it would be very difficult to get properties that will give you a decent ROI unless they need a refurb. And a lot of the properties in the area that HMOs would work are not for sale, because they have either already been turned into HMOs or they are high condition properties. So I would suggest you always go to your area and speak to agents in the area rather than phone calls. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and click the bell notification icon.